All right, welcome to the Secrets of Effective Texting with Marketing Automation. In this class, we're going to be going through how you can start using texting to immediately improve sales conversion, customer retention, and improve profit, greater profit. And so we're going to cover a number of things today. I want to go through these so you can just have a feeling for what we're going to cover. We're going to be showing why texting is 10 times more powerful than email when used correctly. We're also going to be talking about how to immediately increase profits with the most powerful text message you can send to new prospects. And the simplicity of this is probably going to make you go, well, why didn't I think of that sooner? We're going to talk about how you can double your sales conversations with one text message. And remember, or I should say, sales conversions with one text. And that I just kind of let something slip, a little Freudian slip there if you picked up on it. A common element of all customers who buy. We're also going to show you how you can quadruple the number of people you talk to on the phone with a single text message. I'm also going to be warning you about a big tsunami that's going to be hitting all businesses that sell by phone in the fall of 2019. So you're going to want to be aware of that. We're just closely and rapidly approaching the emergence of this tsunami, and you have to be prepared if you sell by phone. We're going to talk about how to get prospects to give you their mobile number happily and willingly. And the most powerful use of texting that most folks are avoiding entirely. And this is actually, this last one is what prompted me to start teaching this class. So my name is Ryan Chapman. I'm the author of several business-related and marketing-related books. We have, Would You Like to Go Big was my first book that was written about upsells because we had a service that actually helped people facilitate one-click upsells. And so that's a great book on understanding why people buy and how you can help people to be able to buy as much as they want to from you by asking the right questions. So that's something you might be interested in. My next book was How to Fix Your Funnel, which actually goes into the psychology and also a real material approach to being able to recognize what is needed in your business, identify what actually is stopping your business from growing, and then how to act on that specifically. So there's a whole philosophy and approach to that is in How to Fix Your Funnel. It's interesting with that book, we've actually had people who have started whole businesses off of that book, which I thought was very flattering that they were using that concept that is discussed in How to Fix Your Funnel to actually completely change their business. And finally, I most recently released The Messaging Connection, which is all about what we're going to be talking about today. So if you'd like to get more information about what we talk about today, go into greater depth, I recommend you check out The Messaging Connection. And in fact, I'll be showing you in a couple of slides how you can get a free digital and audio copy of that if you don't already have those. And even if you have the physical copy already, which you can get on Amazon, I would recommend that you get the audio copy if you're like me. I just seem to pick up new things from listening that I don't get from reading, and vice versa. So this graph right here is really important. I think this kind of sets the stage for everything that you need to understand about what's going on in the world around you. Obviously, you've seen it. I mean, as you look at this chart, you go, yeah, no, that tracks. I follow everything that's being said here. But I want to kind of focus in on something very important, which is there's a good chance that a bulk of your experience has been with the desktop computer, either a laptop or an actual desktop. In some way, a bulk of your experience, if you're on this training today, has been from working with the desktop computer. And in particular, whenever you got on the internet, if that was in the mid-90s or later, you probably spent most of your internet time up until more recently on a desktop computer. And certainly when you're working, most of it's on the desktop computer. And that's really important to acknowledge and recognize, because what that means is that a bulk of your thought process and experience revolves around whatever your modus operandi is with the internet, which typically means that you're checking email probably on your desktop. You're creating emails and automation campaigns on your desktop. And so a lot of your focus inadvertently may be on that desktop experience, which is not where most of your prospects are actually coming across your marketing, having opportunities to engage with you. And most of that, in fact, is actually happening on the mobile phone, and particularly these smartphones that are out there. So this is a little bit of an old chart. I kind of use this on purpose because it kind of gives you this recognition of how big the smartphone has been compared to the desktop computer. I started a company that was very internet email driven back in 2007. we rocketed off to success. But you can see that there was just a small percentage of the overall population and a small percentage of maybe your overall market that would have been on the internet back in 2005 compared to, or 2007 compared to today, where in 2015 there were 1.4 billion mobile devices that were accessing the internet. Today that number is 4 billion. There are 4 billion smartphones covering the planet today. And if that doesn't just blow your mind, then I hope it will, because if you think about what that means for you as a business owner, that's fairly significant. Sometimes people get in their heads, oh, well, yeah, smartphones are in the hands of the younger generations. No, everybody in the United States has access to a smartphone today. Just about everybody, from your homeless people to your most wealthy older people, whatever the case may be, wherever you find them, they're working with smartphones. Okay, and if you're in any developed country, for sure you have almost, if not more than 100% market penetration with smartphones. But in even many of our third world countries, smartphones dominate the way that people access the internet. And the reason that accessing the internet is so important in a marketing and sales discussion is marketing and sales is the process of changing a person's worldview by introducing new information. See, we make decisions based on what we understand today. Those decisions that we make in terms of who we spend money with, who we do business with, all of that is dictated by the way that we see the world right now. In order for us to start making different buying decisions, we have to actually see the world differently. In order to see the world differently, new information has to be communicated with us in an effective way. So it's not just that it's thrown at us, but we actually have to internalize it, process it, and then start making new decisions based off of it. So the essence of business is communication. How effectively can we communicate our message so that people realize they could make different buying decisions that involves our company? So you need to understand that essence, and smartphones are greatly impacting our ability to communicate. And if we use it right, it's phenomenal. If we don't use it effectively, then we will suffer. And in some cases, people will actually go out of business. So because of this whole phenomenon, you want to be opening the door to texting as soon as possible. Now, why did I jump to that conclusion? That was a pretty big jump for some people. And the reason I jumped to that is because the mobile phone, the smartphone today doesn't leave a 3-foot radius of most people for like all day. So in a 24-hour period, that smartphone is within arm's reach of most people. Now, there are a few people that are starting to gain control over their smartphones, but for many people, they're subject to it, and it's within that 3-foot radius. Now, we have many ways that we can communicate on a smartphone, but by far the statistics are very clear. The most effective one is texting. Text messages are seen no matter where the person is, and they get responded to the quickest. And consumption and response are really critical for changing the way people see the world. So can email be received on a smartphone? Absolutely. But what's the likelihood of that email actually being seen on the smartphone? And that goes dramatically down. So that doesn't mean we're not going to use email, as you'll see as we go through this presentation, this training. But what you'll see is that the game has changed, the rules have changed, and you have to change with it. And if you're just focused on email, you're going to be missing out on a large section of opportunity. And when I say we open the door to texting, I'm talking about psychologically, not just legally. So in the United States and Canada, you have to have explicit permission from people to be able to text them. Explicit permission means they have to tell you yes, either by their explicit actions, which means if they text you first, that's like saying, yeah, it's okay to text me. The other one is you have to get them to say explicitly, yes, you may text me if you're using like a web form or a paper form or any other way of gathering data besides them actually texting you. So that's fine. That meets the legal component. But if we want to get the psychological component, then we have to make that so that they are initiating that conversation with us via text message, and they're getting value out of that conversation. And that conversation has some depth to it. I'm going to show you what I mean in just one moment. The other thing that's important to recognize, which I already mentioned, is it's just harder to get opens, reads, and response from email than it was ever before. And it's not just the fact that there's so much competition. One company in particular, like SendGrid, they send out over 4.6 billion emails a day. That's unique email addresses that they send the email to. So there may be more than that in terms of total emails being sent out, but that's just one company. And they're not the biggest company by any stretch of the imagination. They're not the smallest, but they're not the biggest either. So there's a ton of email hitting people's inboxes. On top of that, there's a lot of junk still that somehow gets through. But on top of that, you have these email service providers that are starting to use more and more machine learning, and that, or you sometimes hear it referenced as artificial intelligence. But what they're doing is they're using computers to be able to evaluate the value of a message based off of the sender and how it's received by the people that the email is being sent to. So they're looking at a few different things. They're looking at who sent the email and how do other people respond to the emails that this person sends. So that means the domain name, also the actual address of the email. So what is it, Ryan at whatever, or so they're taking into consideration all of those things. They're also looking at the structure of the email. Does this email structure look similar to other email that we have marked as spam? Does it use similar verbiage? And it used to be keywords, right? So you would never want to use free or buy now or stuff like that in your emails, because that could be flagged very easily by the methods that were used by email service providers in the past. Now it's much more sophisticated than that. They don't actually just look for the phrases. They have ways of determining if the words being used are very similar in structure and format to the words that are being used in other emails that have been marked as spam. So it's very complicated. It's a lot harder than people realize. And it's easy for people then to blame whoever's providing the tool of email for them. But the reality is the game is much harder than it used to be. So this, again, makes it very important for us to open the door for texting. Now, there's three places where I recommend you use texting, and that is in campaign messages. So this is in your automations that you have people going through these campaigns that are made to nurture people or whatever the case may be. There's automated conversations. This is typically used to initiate this texting experience with prospects, capture leads, and then put them into the campaigns. And then there's live messaging. We're going to cover all three of these in today's training. But real quick, I wanted to point out that at the top of the page, you'll see that I have the keyword learn and a phone number. And if you will text learn to 949-835-5300, what you'll get is a free copy. This is a PDF copy of my printed book, The Messaging Connection, as well as an audio version of the book, so you can listen to the book if you'd like. Like I said, that can be really helpful. And I provided both of those because there's some things you want to look at in the book, as well as things you're going to get from just hearing it. And so that's a free gift I want to give to you if you're interested in learning how to be more effective with texting. And I'll define effectiveness as its capacity to create growth in a business. That's how I determine effectiveness. How effective does it deliver the message that you have to help facilitate sales and, as a result, growth in profit and the business? Okay, so that's what we're looking at. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you'll see that opportunity to text learn to that 949 number at the top several times throughout the training. So campaign messages what I recommend is you just go look at your campaigns that you have that are email only right now and start thinking about where could I use a text message to be effective. We're not going to replace all the emails in our email campaigns with text messages. That's exactly the wrong thing to do. But you want to look at your emails and see, okay, which of these emails could be strengthened by having a text message go out either instead of or as part of them. And we're not going to take the email message exactly and then just pop that into a text message, because there are some limitations on texting, right? But also because of the nature of texting, we wouldn't want to do that. But you do want to start looking at your email only campaigns and thinking, okay, where could we start introducing text messages into this process? And there are three places or types of text messages that I insert into campaigns in order to make them more effective. And the first one is a content delivery text message. This usually will include a link to a video or PDF or some other resource. It may also have that resource attached to it, like in the case of an image of maybe, what do they call those? A little diagram, or maybe it's a checklist or a cheat sheet or something like that. We could attach it as well that way. But we want to do a content delivery message. And here's an example of how I just pulled this from one of our campaigns. It says, Bill, here's a link to a video on how the top Infusionsoft users are using Slack. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I've got the little link to that. And that link is a unique link to that person. It's a trackable link, meaning in this case, this is a made up one. So if you went to, I don't know where you'd go, but that's the structure of it. And what that would do is then allow you to link to a page on your blog that had a video embedded in it that could then teach whatever this concept is. And remember, marketing and sales is about changing people's view of the world. That means they have to have new information. And it's not information sent to them, it's information consumed by them. So in this case, I'm sending them there, and there's a number of things that are going to make this more effective than an email. The first one is I know they're going to see this message because this message is going to be delivered to them. They're going to see it. And then that link is a trackable link, meaning if they tap it, I'm going to know that they tapped it. And if I'm using some other tools like Fix Your Funnel has a video tracking tool, I can actually track how far they watched in the video and then apply other tags there. So I can get quite a bit of information through this process, as well as having higher visibility to know, did they actually consume the content I gave them? And that content delivery is really critical. So that's the first type that we do. This next type, and this is, I mentioned a message that would double your sales conversions. And the way that we do that is we actually double our sales conversations. So I'm going to hit two birds with one stone. I also said that there's something common amongst all buyers. All buyers engage in conversation at some point. Now, if you have questions about that, or you think that there's a case where that's not true, I want you to go ahead and chat me. Say, well, Ryan, what about this situation? And I will address that for you. But I guarantee you, any situation you come up with, I will show you how sales always happen in conversation. And so we need to start more conversations if we want to increase sales. And so one of the types of text messages you want to put into your currently email-only campaigns is a conversation starter question related to the campaign context. So here's an example. In that same campaign where I send the content, the link to the video, I then follow up with this question. I sent you a video on how to use Slack with Infusionsoft yesterday. What did you think? Now, I want to point out that the nature of this question is one that there is not a wrong answer. And that's really critical, because if you ask questions that only have a right answer, or that the person is inclined to think only has a right answer, they're less likely to answer that question. And what we're trying to do here is start a conversation. Now, where that conversation goes is a little bit up in the air. But what our primary focus of this particular text message is to start a conversation. So what did you think is a great question, because whatever you think is right. There's nothing wrong with the way that you think. And so that's great. The person can answer this question with confidence. Now, they could say, I didn't even get a chance to watch the video. Well, if they respond with that, fantastic. We've already won. Because what we're trying to do is start a conversation. It's not a conversation of, oh, I watched the video and here's what I got out of it. And you're like, oh, good, that's exactly right. That's not what we're looking for. We're just looking for some conversation to be started. And I'll get more into that in a bit. Another example of this is at the end of an automated conversation, which I'll show you next after this slide. And in an automated conversation, at the end of it, I always like to end with an open-ended question or a conversation starter question. So in this case, it's actually a part of the process that you would go through if you texted LEARN to the 949-835-5300 number. And at the end of it, I said, great, I'll email you the link to the book. By the way, why did you request the book today? And there is a secret formula in this text message that you can use without having to even think very hard, and you'll be able to always get it right, because this question is amazing. And I'll get back to that in just one second, because I have to go into number 3, which is a reference to an email sent. This is really powerful to help increase engagement with your emails. So you notice I kind of downplayed the effectiveness of email, but email still has a role in our marketing automation campaigns. It has them in our company, and it should have in yours. And in order to strengthen the effectiveness of email, we will actually use text messages, because text messages are going to get through and they'll be seen. And so what we'll do is we'll reference back to an email from a text message. And by getting the person to go engage with that email in the inbox, that sends a signal to the machine learning or the artificial intelligence of the email service providers that the emails that you're sending are important to people. And so that will improve the delivery of your email as well. So that's another neat way that we can use text messaging not to replace email, not to offset it, but actually to enhance it. Because there are many things you can do in an email that you can't do in a text message effectively, and vice versa. And so we want to be able to utilize the strengths of each media by working them together. So this is a really important type of email to send. You can overuse all of these emails, so you want to use them, or these text messages, so you want to use them judiciously. So I'm not going to put into an email-only campaign 30 text messages. That's not going to make sense, because the secret of the email and the text working together is that the text is eliciting engagement. So when it comes to the content delivery, it's engagement with the content. So we're going to be able to track that through trackable links and other things, and that's important. The other part with the conversation starter is we're asking a question with the intent of getting a response. We actually want to get a response. That's the huge benefit and power of text messaging, is the ability to engage in conversation. In fact, that is its primary use. If you think about how you use texting today outside of business, you are intending to have conversation. You may be delivering sometimes information, but you want maybe confirmation back. You want to have a dialogue. So that's the superpower of texting. We want to be able to utilize that. And so that's what the conversation starter question is all about. And the reference to the emails, trying to drive engagement in the email, which we can also measure through marketing automation platforms by the engagement with the email, which is often trackable, whether it's a click of a link or the open of an email, depending on the platform. We have a lot of tools that can allow us to measure that engagement, not just generate it. So all these are really powerful in your campaigns. But this one is the most important of all. And I underlined a particular phrase here that I need you to pay attention to, and you should actually write this down, although you probably could memorize it as easy as you could write it down. But I would encourage you to write it down so that you don't forget that you need to incorporate this into your texting. And it is the why did you question. Much like the what did you think question, or I'd love to hear your thoughts question, why did you only has correct answers? Because whatever the motivation of the individual is, that response to that question is true, and that's right. And we as humans want to be right. There's not many people out there that want to be wrong. Most of us want to be right. And because of that, this is a really great question. Now, I added one other thing in here that softens it, because I'm fairly direct here, right? So if somebody came at you and said, why did you request the book today? You know, it could be read a bunch of different ways. But when I put the BTW before, that means by the way, it softens the question a little bit more, because this is a fairly direct question. But it is a great question because there's no ambiguity about what the question is. And that's one of the tough parts about asking questions, is often people can mess up by asking an ambiguous question or a question that's not clear. The why did you, and then the final part of that formula is the context. So in this case, I know that they have texted in the keyword learn. They have provided their name and email so I can send them out the book. And because I know this context, I know when they arrive here what their experience has been, because I created it, and I'm going to show you guys an example of this in just a second. Then when I get to the very end, I know the context. They requested the book. There's no other reason to text learn to 949-835-5300. There's no other reason except for to get the book. So I know that. So all I have to do is take the why did you and then the context that I know in the situation, and then combine those two. And now I've got the perfect question to start a conversation. So not everybody that you send a text message to with a conversation starter question will respond. But those that do, those are the ones you really want to talk to anyways, because they're at a point at which they feel comfortable enough to engage with you. So that means your content, anything else you've done up until that point has made it so that they feel like, yeah, I can talk with this person in some way, or this company. And so that's really important. So here's an example of the automated conversations. This is one that we've been using for several years. It has been modified slightly over time, but that is to incorporate what we've learned over the years. And it starts with the keyword. Just like learn was a keyword that you could text to 949, the 949 number. In this case, demo is a keyword that you text to our 760-621-8199 number. You may be asking, well, Ryan, how come you have two different phone numbers for one business? Well, one number is for our business. The other number is for my book. Every time I publish a book, I get a phone number for that book. And then that always tells me that that's where people's interest is coming from, is related to the book in some way. But in this case, we're texting the keyword demo to 760-621-8199. And when you do, the first thing that I do before anything else is I have, through our software, applied a tag, created or updated a contact record, and I know context and the principal method of communication that I'm interested in, which is the phone number. So I've got context and communication of opportunities just from the keyword being texted. And if nothing else happened, I've got a whole lot of understanding and opportunity associated with this scenario right here. That's really critical to understand. Just texting them texting the keyword says, I'm interested enough to text. Here's my mobile phone number, whether they realize it or not. And then also, I have now a tag applied to a contact record in my CRM. Next, I want to give them an immediate message back. So you'll see in this, there's two different types of messages. There's this first message that is just plain text, and then we have the next two messages that are in gray that will be sent from me, which have media attached. One has a contact card or a V card. The other one has an image. Now, those are known as what's called an MMS. That means media message service. And MMSs are a little bit different in that they go through a different channel. They actually go through a data channel in getting to the phone, and as a result, they're a little bit slower. The text message only is called an SMS, simple messaging service, and it goes directly to the phone very quickly. It's a very refined, old system. It's old in the sense that it's been around for 40 years, but it's very refined in that it's very quick. And for the most part, that text message will get you just about as quickly as you said send on your original message. And I'd like to always start an automated conversation with a pure SMS or pure text message, because I want it to quickly get back to them. That gives them some feedback that what they did was correct. And if you don't realize it, we're all walking around looking for feedback that what we're doing is correct. And it comes in many forms. It may be the approval of other people. You may say something and you see the reaction on the person's face. What we're looking for is some sort of approval that we're in the right place. Or if you're trying to get a rise out of somebody, then you're looking for that. But anyway, we're looking for feedback. So when the person texts a keyword, if I were to send them an MMS, it could take anywhere from 5 seconds to a minute before they get that message, depending on the data network at the time that that's being routed through there. And so that's not quick enough to give people this reassurance that they texted in the right word to the right number. So that immediate response is really important for establishing that, hey, you did the right thing, and then getting them to continue the conversation. So in this case, because I know I'm going to send an MMS next, I know that could take anywhere from 5 seconds to a minute, I say it might take a few seconds. I'm also asking for them to reply with their first name. So in conversations that are meant to generate, automated conversations are meant to generate a lead and then start a conversation. That's their intent from my perspective. And so what I want to do is I normally want to gather name and email in an automated conversation. If I wanted additional information, I might then route them to a mobile form or a survey of some sort. I'll show you some examples of that in just a sec. But what I want to do in an automated conversation is, generally speaking, collect the name and email address. And I like to always put the name first, because it's obvious I can't deliver what I'm promised when I said text the keyword until after I get an email address. So it helps people continue on through the conversation. So here I ask, reply with your name. And so what will happen there is that information is going to be now available. I'll show you in just a second how that's used. But in my next message, I attach a contact card. And this contact card has always been important, something we've recommended for years, but has become really important right now. And I mentioned earlier in the beginning that there's a tsunami coming at small businesses, or all businesses for that matter, that sell by phone. So if you generate leads and then sell by calling those leads, you need to understand what I'm about to tell you and how critical getting a prospect to install a contact card is on their smartphone. It used to be a good idea because it would help with recognition when you called. So if you installed my contact card and then you got a call from me, then my name or my company name, maybe my face or my logo could show up. And that helps you with recognition, which is the number one reason that people don't answer incoming calls, is because they don't know who's calling them. They may see the phone number and the city and state or country or whatever that the call is coming from. But if they don't recognize the number, and none of us memorize numbers like we used to, So mostly we work off of our contact book on our mobile phone. So you want to make sure that you have that name, your name, in their smartphone, in their contact book, and this is why. In iOS 13, which is coming out this fall, the next couple months here, there's a new feature that's going to become wildly popular, and it's known as the silence unknown callers. I mean, I don't have to even ask. I know that you already know that you get probably 30 calls a month at a minimum, maybe a week, from unknown callers. And it is very annoying because it interrupts your flow, or it gets your attention, or it may even interrupt something that's important to you. Whatever the case may be, nobody likes getting these calls from people they don't know who they are. And so there's a new feature coming out on the iPhone. If it's not already on Android, I guarantee you it'll be out in the next few months on Android, which will silence unknown callers. What that means is if the contact is not in the contact book, if the phone number is not represented on a contact in the contact book, then when somebody calls that phone and this feature is turned on, the calls won't even ring. They'll go straight to voicemail, and they will be displayed on the recents list. I'm not even 100% certain if an alert will come up saying you have a new voicemail. It may not even do that. So it's totally going to suppress and silence all calls from unknown numbers. Now, if you call from a business to warm leads that you've generated, then what's going to happen? They're never going to hear from you. They're never going to know you called. So your effectiveness is going to go from whatever it is. Let's say you get 10% of the people that you call to answer. It's going to go to zero. It's going to go to zero. And if your customer skews more towards the iPhone side of things, which tends to be more associated with affluent, not always, but more. And in the United States, it's 50%, 51% actually of the population owns an iPhone. The other 49% owns an Android. That's a big deal. And that is going to impact a lot of businesses, because guess who's going to be talking about the silence unknown callers? Everybody, because nobody wants the calls. So everybody's going to talk about it. If you don't have it turned on, they're going to say, why don't you have that turned on? And it's going to happen very quickly, and it's going to be a terrible thing for a lot of businesses that don't understand this concept. So you want to get the contact card installed on their phone, and you got to think really hard about how you can do this. And I can give you a few ideas in the Q&A portion if you have questions then. So the other thing that's happening is, like I said before, the contact info is being gathered and added to the contact record. So I've got the name and I've got the email address now in the contact record. I've got tags being applied that I can use to spur automation. And I also got this information available to start personalizing messages immediately. So you see I picked up the name, and immediately I have that inserted into the personalization of the very next text message, and also in the image in the next text message. So you can see how we can personalize, which then again keeps attention, makes it feel intimate, makes it feel like they're having a conversation with a person instead of a company. And that's really important. And so that's an important part of structuring your automated conversations. Now, you may have noticed, if you were really astute, that the text in these MMS messages is longer than in my SMS. A SMS, or simple text message, is only allowed to have 160 characters. Granted, you may put more. You'll be charged for 2, but it will combine it into 1 for most of the carriers and most of the devices. But generally speaking, I try and keep it smaller, because that 3 lines is a secret formula. I didn't do it well in the second text message. You can see I have 6 lines on that. But really what I want to do is I want to try and keep my text messages below 3. And if I have to go over 3 lines, I want to put a break in it. You'll see I did that properly in the bottom text message. Now, the reason that that's important is because it creates a word wall when you ever get taller than that, and that can be intimidating for people. You can actually lose some people, not all, but some people, from reading the whole message. Okay, so that's important to know. The other thing was the MMS, you're allowed to do 1,600 characters instead of 160 characters in an SMS. And so that means I can do a little bit more. Now, I never want to use 1,600 characters in an MMS, because the nature of texting is it's supposed to be short. That's the nature of it. And so you don't want to violate the rule and go long. If you do, you'll lose people. So I'm kind of pushing the edge of what's available in that bottom text message, but I help myself by breaking it into 3-line segments. So whether it's proper grammar or structure in terms of paragraphs or not is immaterial, because we're talking about psychology and the way people consume. So we want a 3-line at the most, and that's the way you want to be thinking about it. You'll notice in this process, again, tags are being applied all along, so I can use those to initiate automation. This link right here is also a trackable link that I mentioned before. That is unique to the contact and the link I'm trying to share with them. And in this case, I'm sending them to what's known as a mobile survey. Now, mobile survey is going to gather a little more information. It's also going to tell me about the person. If the person taps on that link and then answers the questions, that tells me their level of interest, and that helps me then to gauge how how I should allocate my limited resources when I'm going after interacting with prospects and leads in my database. So that's good for you as well. And then finally, you'll see that there is the most important part, which is the conversation starter question. If you did the automated conversation just like I did here, fantastic. But if you left out this last question, it's what I would consider a fail. And the reason why is because sales cycles and the length of them is really critical for the growth of a business. The shorter the sales cycle, the quicker a business can grow. The longer the sales cycle, the more time it takes for a business to grow. And even if you are able to spin up a bunch of them, your resources are limited. So the length of a sales cycle is really critical. Well, the major factor in sales is conversation. It's not time for the most part, it's conversation. Now, sometimes having the conversations takes a long time, and thus the sales cycle is expanded. But if we want to compress sales cycles to the shortest possible distance, then what we will do is we will start conversations immediately in the lead capture process. So by asking this question, not everybody that becomes a lead is going to answer that question, but those that do are the ones that are most prepared to get into the sales conversation. The others may need more information, more time before they can feel comfortable enough to engage in that conversation. But for those that are able to engage immediately, we can dramatically shorten the sales cycle by just asking this "why did you" question. And you'll see I used the same formula right here. I didn't go fancy. I just said, "Why did you text demo to our number today?" Right? I don't have to be a genius to figure out that question. All I have to do is apply the formula. By the way, why did you? And then whatever they did. So you could use this one for any conversation. You could, in fact, rip off this entire question and just substitute demo with whatever keyword you use. So if you use the keyword book, for example, or appointment, or whatever you used, you just swap it out. By the way, why did you text appointment to our number today? And boom, you've got the perfect question for starting a conversation. So this is a really great formula. I hope that you'll use it. This right here I just showed to show you how simple it is to set up a conversation like this. This is in our Fix Your Funnel software. You can see how quick and easy it is for us to set up this conversation. We've got tags being applied throughout the conversation. We have a little thumbnail image showing us what the image is attached with it, or the V card. So it's really easy to see how it looks and to then go in and make modifications. But texting is all about conversation. Hopefully you've gotten that already, but that is really important to understand. It's all about conversation. So if you're having conversations with people, then you're doing it right. If you're speaking at people, you're super annoying and you're not effective. I can guarantee you that. If you're getting any kind of results speaking at people instead of with people, well, count yourself lucky, and just imagine how much better it could be if you actually engaged in conversation. And the reason that the engaging in conversation is so critical from a sales or profit perspective is that most profit is a single question away. The number of sales that you have, if you're not currently asking questions and getting people to ask, when I'm doing this conversation, I'm asking a question, but the real intent is to get them to ask their question or express their concern. And if you're not doing this right now, if you're not giving people an easy way, and texting is much easier than calling or emailing even, to let people express what their question or concern is, then if you're not doing that right now, then all sales that you have, go look at your sales and say, okay, what's my baseline of sales? I almost can imagine in most businesses, depending on lead flow, that you could probably double your sales simply by asking a question. In fact, we saw this happen with one of our customers. One of our customers was running webinars in order to grow their business. That was a primary way of growing the business, is they do webinars. And then at the end of the webinar, they'd have a call to action for people to buy. Well, with the help of one of our partners, Ross Walker, this particular customer said, well, what can I do to increase sales? And Ross, understands the doctrine that we teach here, and he's implied it. And he said, hey, let's ask a question. Let's ask a question, try and start a conversation. So this customer did that, and the result was that they doubled their sales, and they were super ticked off. And the reason they were ticked off is because they had not been selling half the people that they could have sold and gained as customers for years because they hadn't been doing this one simple thing, which was asking a question. So in their case, right after the webinar, they would give a couple hours for people to buy that were normal buyers. And then people that hadn't bought within a couple hours, they'd send a text message designed to start a conversation. And the result was doubling of sales. I guarantee you that in your business, if you haven't been giving people an opportunity to ask that question or to express that concern, that if you incorporate a text message into your flow, you are going to double your sales. It's almost every single time we've done this, it's been at least a doubling. Sometimes it's been a tripling. And that's because there's that much opportunity in your unconverted leads, because most people are not buying from your competition. Most people are doing nothing because they didn't have their concern resolved. They didn't have their question answered. And so if you facilitate that, well, then you fulfill this formula, which is more conversations equals more sales, which equals more profit. Okay. And the beautiful part about the one question sales, those are people that buy after asking their one question or expressing their one concern, is they have no additional cost to them, no significant additional cost. Most of your cost is acquiring the lead in the first place. And just asking one question is like pennies, and it is worth every cent, because you're going to convert people who you've already been paying to know who they are into actual customers, because you give them a chance to ask their question, express their concern. So some people call, some people don't call leads. If you call leads, you want to quadruple your phone call conversation rate. You do this one thing. So the reason, number one, people, we already established this before, and you know this from personal experience because it's your experience as well. The number one reason you don't answer a call is because you don't recognize the number. And this is true for all people. So if we know that more conversations equals more sales equals more profit, then we need to increase the number of people we have conversations with on the phone. And this little method right here quadrupled our phone call answer rate. So what's a phone call answer rate? If you place 100 calls and you get 5 people to answer, that's your rate. If we quadruple it, you'll get 20 people to answer. Okay. If you have 20 conversations instead of 5, what are your sales going to do? This isn't rocket science, right? It's pretty simple. So you want to increase conversations. That should be your total goal across your business. If you want to grow the business, increase conversations. How do we have more conversations? Not how do we generate more leads, although that's a factor in conversations. Our bigger concern should be, how do I have more conversations? Not just more leads, but more conversations. That's where the money is, conversations. Can I say it one more time? So what we do is we send a text message before we make the call. In the text message, now this also there's this assumption that's going on here. We have this presupposition that you have permission to text people because you open that door beforehand. Okay, so if you don't have that, then you can't do this, and so you're missing out on a huge opportunity. This reinforces the importance of trying to gather leads with permission to text. Huge. The easiest way to do is have them text to your phone number a keyword, because then they're not thinking about the fact that they're giving you the mobile phone. If they have to fill out a web form, they're thinking about the fact that they're giving you their phone number. Get them to text the keyword. Now they're thinking about the keyword and what they're going to get from it, not what they're giving you. Really big deal. So think about that. But I'm going to identify who I am. A lot of salespeople, they have a knee-jerk reaction where they're like, well, I don't want to reveal who I am because then they won't answer. No, wrong. The reason that people aren't answering is because they don't know who's calling. Reveal who you are. Bill, it's Ryan from Fix Your Funnel. And then identify exactly why you're calling. Deception is not a win to building relationships of trust. Relationships of trust is how you grow a business long-term. You can hustle people, but for the amount of labor it is to hustle people, you'd be way better off just applying it to building long-term trusted relationships, because those pay you way better for much longer. They generate referrals. They grow themselves. Businesses that have trust as their core attribute grow themselves. So identify who you are, identify why you're calling. I'm going to call you in a few minutes to see if you'd like help incorporating texting into your marketing. Don't mince words. with the text message, we're short. Remember, we're right to the point. We want to get right to the point in this message, and we want to just be real clear. Now, the other thing that's interesting is if you say, it's Ryan from Fix Your Funnel, even if the phone, right, doesn't have your contact record put into their phone, into their contact book, by saying it's Ryan, most of them are going to deduce using artificial intelligence that you are Ryan and put that next to your phone number going forward. That may not overcome the tsunami that's coming, but it will at least help you, for those people that haven't done that yet, to see, oh, Ryan or Fix Your Funnel show up under that phone number and help them give context and know if they want to answer or not. Now, when we started doing this, and this was just an idea of one of our salespeople, they're like, hey, what if I texted people before I called? I said, well, try it. Can't hurt us. We already have permission to text them. Let's do it. And what we found out is that most people that will text you, there's quite a few people that will text you back and say, hey, can we reschedule? I'm busy. So, and why are they busy? They're in the restroom. Maybe they won't tell you that, but they'll say, hey, I'm busy. I can't talk right now. They're in a meeting. They're working on something. You know, whatever the case may be, there's a whole host of reasons people don't answer the phone. And many of them are because it's just not the right time. Well, as a salesperson, guess what? You don't want to talk to somebody when they don't have time to talk to you. So the reschedule is great. That was what partially contributed to our quadrupling of the phone call answer rate, was just the ability to reschedule and actually talk to people on their terms. They love it. The next group of people just will answer because you've identified who you are and why you're calling. They just answer when you call. And there's also a segment that don't answer. Fine. You know, they know who I am. They know why I'm calling. They don't answer. That's great. I don't have to waste time with them. And then there are even some who are courteous enough to text you back and say, I'm not interested. Well, fantastic. Take them off the list. Don't spend another dime, another minute calling that person because you know they're not interested. Well, that's great. That tells you everything you need to know. Those 4 outcomes are the most common things that happen as a result of doing this pre-call text message strategy. But the biggest secret of all the things we covered, and hopefully you've been able to grasp how critical and how business changing those concepts we just covered were, because they are. They change everything. If you don't put this last piece in, this biggest secret of texting, into play, then you don't get a fraction of the benefit that you would get otherwise. And this is it, live texting. You have to do live texting, which means you got to have push notifications coming from a native app on your phone. That's an iPhone app or an Android app on your phone, giving you those push notifications, because you got to know when people text you so that you can be able to text them. Also, this means you want to have a distributed team situation. You don't want to be trying to share one mobile phone for the whole company. You actually want to have the whole team being able to receive notifications of incoming text messages on your business line. And you want to be preserving all that history, all that interaction inside of your CRM or inside of this texting application, separate from the individual, because then people don't leave with conversations on their personal cell phone. That's all documented and stored inside of the company record. And you want that, so you also want to have a web app as well as the smartphone app, so that when you're sitting at your desk, which many of us do for bulk of our day, we can also get notifications there. Granted, even though I'll get the notification on my desktop, I get it on my watch, because I have a watch attached to my smartphone. And that's, for me, the most useful, because I look at that real quick, I can glance, and I can see in a second, is that something I need to address, or is that another member of my team that needs to address it? But it keeps us all up to date with incoming messages coming from our prospects and customers. So in review, here's what we covered. I think it's pretty clear that texting is way more powerful than email, and it can actually even help your email when it's used correctly, which means we're using it in a conversational method, not speaking at, conversational. We also showed how you can increase profits by using the most powerful text message you can send to new prospects with our secret formula of the why did you, or by the way, why did you question. We showed how we can double conversations with one text, sales conversions with one text, by increasing our sales conversations. And that was the same message. I kind of did a double whammy on you there, because I gave you 2 different points, and I actually did it with one stone, right? We talked about the common element of all customers who buy, which is they engage in conversation. All sales happen in conversation. We showed you how to quadruple the number of people you talk to on the phone with a single text message. That was our pre-call SMS. Identify who you are, why you're calling. We showed how to get people to give you their mobile phone number using automated conversations. By using a keyword and a phone number that people text to, they do it without even realizing it. They do it willingly because they're engaging with you in a way that's meaningful for them. And finally, we showed you the most powerful, I showed you the most powerful use of texting that most folks are avoiding, which is the live text message. So if you use all the stuff that we talked about today, not only are you going to be effective in texting, you're going to be effective in communication, and you're going to grow sales, because sales are a function of conversation. Sales are a function of conversation, which means the more conversations we can have, then the more sales we can have, the more profit we can have, and the faster we can grow a business to be something that lasts for a long time. You know, for me, it's been really exciting to watch companies come from this email-only paradigm to a multimedia paradigm. And as they do, and they start incorporating text messaging effectively into their business, the growth is phenomenal, because there's all this latent opportunity that lays in your business, just waiting for you to tap into it and extract it. And a bulk of it is around this one question customer or prospect, this person who's a question or a concern away. And the thing about texting is, unlike a phone call, people feel safe in texting. It's fascinating. They will engage in text conversations that they would never do on the phone, because they feel like they're safe. They can protect themselves from being hustled. There's this kind of buffer of time where they don't have to immediately respond to somebody like they do when they're talking to the person live. And because of that, they're much more willing to engage in a texting conversation than even a phone call. Now, that being said, often we can segue to a phone call, but that's really one of the critical things that goes on here with texting, and when you use it effectively. So I'll open up for question and answers. Sometimes I have no questions. Sometimes I have some. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask. It can be on anything we talked about. Here are things that just came up as we were going through this. Again, you can just use the Zoom webinar chat to ask your question, or you can use the Q&A option there. While you're thinking of your questions, or if there will be no questions, I'll bring up one other topic that is something really interesting that Trent and I covered in a recent podcast episode of our How to Fix Your Funnel podcast. And we're doing a little series called Beyond the Messaging Connection. We're talking about the messaging connection, my latest book, which, by the way, you can get by texting LEARN to 949-835-5300. And what we did is, in that conversation, we're talking about email, and we're talking about a concept called new rules versus old rules. And I feel like if you get this concept, this is a concept that I talked about in my book, How to Fix Your Funnel. But if you get this concept, for me, for the first time, I finally realized why everybody sucks at email for the most part, and most people do. And the reason why is because what they did with email is they took what worked for direct response marketing. Now, direct response marketing originated out of direct mail. That's kind of where the direct came from originally. And direct mail was this kind of trying to encapsulate a salesperson in print, right? So we would have the sales conversation. And this, again, some people say, well, what about people that just go to your website and buy, Ryan? They didn't have a conversation. And this is where it comes from. Copy, sales copy, is designed to be a salesperson in print. And what that means is it carries on a conversation. It actually carries on both sides. And it's trying to actually facilitate a conversation to happen inside the mind of the prospect. So with direct mail, it wasn't easy for people to respond. In fact, the way that most people had to respond to direct mail is they had to go get a postage stamp, lick it, stick it on the envelope, write a check or write a request for more information, put it in the envelope, take it to the mailbox, and mail it. That was how a response was. So frequently, the response in direct mail was to just buy. And the reason why it was to just buy is because it took as much effort to start a sales conversation as it did to get them to just break out the checkbook and buy. And so what happened was we had this whole industry around direct mail that is designed to go straight for the purchase, because it's the whole salesman and print thing. And in addition to that, there's no other easy way to engage in conversation, which then could facilitate more sales. So they had to kind of do it all in one swing. And so they would do it in either multiple direct mail pieces or in one direct mail piece, but whatever it was, whether it was an ad or a long format sales letter or whatever the case may be, that's what it was trying to do. And then we introduced email. And all the people that started originally doing email for marketing and sales came from the direct response copywriting world. And so what they did was a natural thing everybody does is they see this new technology and they say, okay, what's this new technology? Oh, it's email. I don't have to wait. And so what they saw is they saw the benefits was I don't have to wait to send it. I can send it immediately. So I don't have to wait for the postage system, the postal system. And then also it doesn't cost me anything, if hardly at all, to send the email. So it's almost, I perceive it to be free. So what they saw, the advantages of email was it was free and instant. And I said, well, free and instant, that's great. I mean, I can reduce my sales cycle. I can get instant feedback because I send out an email and do they buy? I send out an email and do they buy? And I change up my email and then more or less buy. And so they had this instant feedback loop. And so this is the way that email kind of evolved. And as a result, if you go look at 99% of all emails in marketing automation platforms, they are speak at pieces of copy. They are designed to be read and then responded to by clicking a link to go buy or do whatever it is that the call to action is. Very few of them actually want to engage in conversation through email. But yet, one of email's big superpowers, one of its big benefits that it brought, its advance in technology, was not just the instant ability to send quickly, but also the ability to get a response. And if we would have had more salespeople involved with the development of email marketing, then we would have seen more people do that. But 99% of all emails, probably even 99.5%, are speak at email. They do not request a response. In fact, they're not interested in response. Frequently, they're from email inboxes that aren't monitored at all. Or if they are monitored, they're monitored very lazily, so checked infrequently. And they're not engaging in conversation, which is interesting because the huge benefit of email beyond the instant part was actually the ability to engage in conversation. And if it's true, which it is, I can just about prove it, that all sales happen in conversation, and the sales that don't happen because it's not because they're going to somebody else, but simply because there's a question or concern that stands between them and actually taking action. And if we actually used email to elicit a conversation, we used actual conversation started questions in the beginning, we would have seen a huge difference in how email is today. But because it has become a speak at media, then largely emails received through marketing automation campaigns are perceived to be spam. They're what's in it for the sender, not what's in it for the recipient emails. And so most of them are poorly written copy, even though they followed the rules of the great copywriters of the past, which is don't expect a response, just ask them to buy. And so if you actually used your email to ask for a response, engage in conversation, it would have been more effective and will be more effective if you do that today. But that is the big mistake that I see people making with text messaging today, is they perceive it to be a speak at media, just like email. It's instant, and the only benefit that they see over it is that it'll be actually read, unlike their emails. There's a small percentage of emails that are actually read. And so people look at text and they go, oh, great, it's instant. The downside is there's a little cost to it, but the other upside is it's going to actually be seen, unlike my emails. And so they start sending the same kind of garbage that they put in their emails through texting, and then they don't get the results that they hoped for. They'll get some because they're going to have more people see their messages, but they're not tapping into the full power of the medium. The full power of the medium is engaging in one-on-one conversations with people. And if you do that, then the sales go up. Now, the big concern I hear about this is people are like, well, I don't have time to be engaging in conversation with people. If that is true, if it's actually true, which I debate, I doubt it. But if it's actually true, then you've got a bigger problem than just the conversations. Your bigger problem is your business math is insufficient to sustain an actual business. You actually shouldn't be in business at all. And you probably won't be in the long term if that's the case. If your business math is sufficient to allow you to have a conversation, or to allow a salesperson on your team to have a conversation, then you will understand and know that the more conversations you have, the better off you're going to be, because that means more sales. And so if you hesitate at all and say, oh, I can't afford to be having conversations with people, what you need to understand is you're not going to have conversations with tire kickers. Conversations will only be engaged in with people who are interested in making a buying decision. People who have no intention to make a buying decision will not engage in sales conversation. They just won't do it. So you don't have to worry about that in the first place. And if you're still worried about it, or you still feel like, oh no, I'm getting inundated with conversations, if you actually follow the advice I gave you and it's not worth it to you, then all we have to do is work on your business math. It's not a problem of having conversations. It's a problem of the math of your business. You're not making enough for the time invested to make it worth your while. And that can be fixed too. For many businesses, that can be fixed too. There are people that will pay $2 and $3 for a bottle of water that you can get for 10 cents, 20 cents. And there are reasons that even in commodities, people pay more than they do than other people do. And so there's always an opportunity to get the business math right. But if you have a business math right, conversations are always going to be the answer. And so I encourage you to do that. Now we're right at the hour mark, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But I don't see any questions that came through, which is not uncommon. So have a great day. And if you do have any questions that come up later, just text us at 760-621-8199. You can go to fixyourfunnel.com and chat with us there as well. And look forward to helping you be more effective in your texting.